just saw Dr. Math with some graph paper. I think he must be plotting something. All right, mathletes, so let's get into plotting equations in the form y equals mx plus b. Okay, so before we dive in here, we need some background, right? Because this all has to make sense. I don't want you just to memorize things for one example, because later on, when they come up in different forms, you're not going to know what to do. All right, so here's where I want us to start. All right, so say we have this equation right here. So let me get my little laser pointer, my laser, or is it this finger? I don't know, Dr. Evil. So which points are solutions to the following equation? So we have this equation here, right? And we're trying to figure out which one of these points, or maybe there's multiple points, are solutions to this equation. And this is really going to help us understand how the graphs of these equations, just like this one, look. All right, so let's dive in here. So you notice we have a bunch of points. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do 2 of them for you, and then I want you guys to comment down below which points do you think, which other points do you think are solutions to this equation. And what does that mean, solutions? Well, that means this. Let's pick one point. Let's pick the point -4, 4. So this E is -4, 4. So what that means is my X is -4 and my Y is 4. So wherever I see this equation, for Y, I plug in 4, and for X, I'm gonna plug in -4. And if this is a solution, I'm gonna see both sides equal. So write that down, both sides have to be equal, all right? So we get 4 equals -8 plus 3, and right away, we see that both sides are not equal, because I'm gonna get 4 equals -5, which obviously is not true. All right, so we know that this point is not a solution to that equation. All right, let me pick one that I know is a solution. So I'm gonna pick, and then you're probably asking, how do you know it's a solution? I'm not gonna give away all my secrets. So I'm gonna pick point A here, right? So point A up there is a point 1, 5. So let's plug in 1, 5. 1, 5. So my Y value is 5, my X value is 1. So we plug it in here and we get 2 plus 3. So we get 5 equals 5. So it's a true statement, right? So this point satisfies this equation. It makes it true. So this point right here is going to fall on the line that I'm going to draw here. And this point is a solution, right? And so what I want you to do is write down these points, right? Look at these points. And I want you to comment down below, plug them in, see what other points are solutions. And then we'll check our answers right now. Follow me to the next question. All right, so check your answers. You should have got these 4 points, the points A, B, C, and D. So when you plugged each one of these in to this equation, you would have saw that it was a solution, all right? And so if I were to graph this line, and we're gonna look at how do I know how to graph this line? If I were to graph this line, what we would see is that this line is gonna pass through every single one of these points. So how is this line made? Well, the way it's made is this line has infinitely many points. Oh, there goes a tongue twister. It has infinitely many points. So it has millions, billions, trillions, right? We go on forever of points, and all these points, right, make up this line right here. So it has infinitely many points that make up this line. So this line right here consists of all the points that satisfy this equation, right? So now what I want to do is I want to analyze this line, because obviously I don't want to plot millions and millions and millions of points, right? Because I only have another 5 minutes of this video. So follow me so we could check this out deeper. All right, so as we dive deeper in this, let's look at a few things. Number one, I want to look at the y-intercept. And just a reminder, the y-intercept is that point, right, where our line crosses the y-axis. That's our y-intercept, right? And we could see that the y value, right, the y-intercept of this coordinate, so let me write down the point right there. So this is our point 0, 3. And whenever you're talking about the y-intercept, your x value is always 0, even on Sunday, all right? So our y-intercept here is 3 because that's the point, right? The y value in which this line crosses our y-axis. All right, so what I want you to do is take a look at that and take a look at our line here, our equation. This is the equation that I want to graph. So do you notice anything? And we should, right? This value right here is our y-intercept. So I want you to see the connection. So this value, this constant, is always going to represent here our y-intercept when I have a certain form. And we're going to talk about that form, but I want us to see the connection. All right, so does that make sense? Good. Let's talk about this next idea. All right, so to make sure we really understand, I want you guys to look at this graph right here and tell me what is the y-intercept of this line. So press pause, comment down below, and let's see if we're in agreement. So y equals 3x minus 4. What is this y-intercept? All right, so you should have said, should ask yourself, where does this line cross my y-axis, right? So we could see it crosses at -4. So once again, you could see that this represents the y-intercept. All right, so the next idea we're gonna look at is the slope. How does the slope come into play here? All right, so what I want to do is now I want to connect the dots, no pun intended. So I just labeled some points here on this line, right, that has this y-intercept of -4, and now I want to use this line here and these points to help me find my slope. So let's do a little recap. Whenever we're finding our slope, remember, we're looking at how much we go up or down. So we usually say rise over run. And I'm going to give you a few things to think about. There's so many different ways of thinking about this, but let me just give you one so you could stick with and you don't have to get confused. So when I'm looking at my points, I always start at a point to the left and then look at the next point to the right. So I'm always going from left to right. That's going to make things easier for yourself, right? So in this case, from left to right, if I draw a little stick figure here, if I draw a little Dr. Math down here, I could see this is an uphill climb. So my slope is positive. I'm going up. As I go from left to right, I'm climbing, right? So let's start at this point right here. Let me make it dark so we could all see. So this point right here, 1, -1, and I want to end up right here. So first of all, how many units do I move up? So I'm going to move up 1, 2, 3 units. So I went up 1, 2, 3 units. So our numerator is 3, and then how many units do I have to move to the right? Well, we move 1. So our slope is 3 over 1, which is just 3. Do we see that anywhere in our equation? Bam, right? So we could see that our slope right here is always going to be in front of our x variable. So our slope, right, is going to be in front of our x variable. And that is the relationship between this graph and our equation, which is in the form, let me write this down, y equals mx plus b. And now this is where we need to add the little details. Well, what does b represent? B, we said, represents the y-intercept. What does x represent? Or sorry, what does m represent? M represents our slope, right? The steepness of this line. And so in this case, our slope is 3. So that's why for m, our slope was 3. And for our y-intercept, it was -4. All right. So let's start to add more elements to this picture. So when you're graphing these are some tips that I have for you, right? So the first thing we want to make sure is that when we're graphing these lines, in my opinion, the easiest graphs, the easiest lines to graph are the ones that are in the form y equals mx plus b, right? I want that y to be isolated. I want it to be by itself, all right? And then I want the x next to my slope, and then I want my constant, which is going to be the number that has no variable, right? And this is going to represent my y-intercept. So let's label that. This is going to be my y-intercept. That's going to tell me where it crosses this line. I also like to think about that when I'm graphing as my starting point. So I'm going to start with the y-intercept. You might want to write that down. And then we use the slope, right? So using the example we just did, what I would do is I would start right here at the y-intercept, which is -4. So let me make that really dark so we can see. So I would start right here. I'm gonna make it really big and exaggerate here at -4. That's my starting point. And then this tells me where to go. And if this is a whole number, what I encourage you to do is to write it over 1, right? So turn it into a fraction. So if you divide it by 1, nothing changes. So that's why I would divide it by 1, because we're not changing anything. Well, why would we do that? Well, remember, this is rise over run. So this tells me to get to my next point, I go up 1, 2, 3, right? Up 3 since it's positive. And this number on the bottom, I like to think of it as always going to the right. So I go up 3, and then I move right 1. So again, up 1, 2, 3, right 1, and there we are at our very next point right here. So that's how you graph equations, right? Lines that are in the form y equals mx plus b. B is our y-intercept, our starting point, and m is our slope. All right, let's get some more practice in here, mathletes. All right, so now before you head out of here, we got 2 things to do. Number 1, smash that like button, subscribe. I guess that's already 2 things. And then we have a problem for you. So here's our last problem, and we want you to comment down below. Tell us what you think the equation is for this line. So here's our line right here. And what we want you to do is write in this form, y equals mx plus b. So comment down below, tell us what you got. Let's make sure you really understand this. So remember, our b is our y-intercept. Where is it crossing this line? And then our m is the slope. And if you have questions, we got answers. So make sure to comment with your questions below so we can make sure you really understand this material so you could be a beast in math. All right, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, whoever you are, it was a pleasure teaching you. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.